Hello everybody, today I'm back with another video. I know it's been a while since I've uploaded. I've just been busy behind the scenes with real life stuff. But this doesn't mean that I'm stopping YouTube or anything like that, but I'm still going with a deep motivation to do so. But as of the last few days ago, an article came out, which I'm sure you guys have seen, in regards to the player base of Marvel Rivals and, well, more specifically the player count. And this article states that 85% of Marvel Rivals players have dropped off since the launch back last year. And I've seen a lot of people run with this when it comes to making videos, and they'll have Marvel Rivals is dying on the thumbnail with the text on it, and it's a very face value sort of thing. So I just wanted to make a video to sort of, if you have any worries in regards to the player base dropping, should I be worried? Is this game actually dying? In layman's terms, no, it's not dying at all. In fact, this is actually perfectly normal. And a lot of people are kind of overreacting in regards to this news, which I don't blame them, especially when it comes to how the industry works and how live service games work. You'll just see like a big number and then you'll think bad, which again isn't, I don't blame anybody that thinks that way, especially when they're not too familiar how things work in regards to live service games and multiplayer games in general. Now you might ask, oh, but what does this 85% mean, this 85% player drop? And like much other people who make videos about this or just topics, they'll try to doom and gloom. And personally, I'm not one to sort of defend a company. I just kind of tell it how it is. And it just so happens to be that how it is right now is not true in regards to what people are saying with this like article and news that just came out. So for a little context, when a live service game comes out, it's at its biggest, right? Depending on how it's handled beforehand and like how much hype there is around it. Bar none, whenever that game is out, whatever it may be, that is when it is at its most popular. And funny enough, this just doesn't apply to multiplayer games. This applies to really any game or majority of games, sort of a cousin genre to like sort of hero shooters, I would say, are fighting games. And in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to like fighting games, even though they sell some sell like millions of copies, they are still very niche in regards to the industry as a whole. But fighting games usually boom in the beginning the most, especially because there is a large casual audience that companies will rely on to purchase the game. Now, of course, there are games that are just like so huge and like almost like a cultural phenomenon that this sort of thing doesn't apply to them. And I'm talking about your Fortnite, your Dota 2s, your Counter-Strike, your League of Legends. Those games are like in a pantheon of their own. Like they will never have to worry about the game quote unquote dying ever for however long that company ever exists. But, rolling back to what I was talking about in regards to, this player drop not being something new to multiplayer games, I wanted to touch on how exactly Marvel Rivals is in a great position, actually, because I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was 600,000 players. You guys are gonna have to fact check me on that. I think it was 600,000 players. You guys are gonna probably have to fact check me on that. But anyways, from 600,000 players, that's huge, right? And I could see how anybody will look at that number and then see like the number now, and it's like averaging 90 to 100K and be like, whoa, huge drop off. But again, given the context that this is something actually normal that happens with like 99.9% of multiplayer games, this is actually really good for Marvel Rivals. Because what a player base drop actually means is there are people that lose interest in the game. Of course, there are people that just tried it with their friends. They're just really casual, or they just wanted to play their favorite superheroes or whatever. However, from that number, the people that stay over, still having about nearly 100K concurrent players on average, 90 to 100, is pretty good, because what that means is those 90 to 100,000 players, those are committed players. Those are wallets pretty much to Netease, right? And I feel like there's a ratio to take into account just for perspective to those who don't know how like this is actually pretty good news for the game. Like things could have been worse. Like for example, let's take half of it, right? Let's take half of the peak off, right? So let's say Marvel Rivals peaked at about 300,000 when it just came out. That number that would have dropped would be a lot lower if the initial peak count was not as high. Like, you guys get what I'm saying? Like, for example, like I said, 300,000 players peak, hypothetically. And today, imagine the article came out, it probably would have been a lot lower than 80 to 100,000 K. Like we're talking about maybe like 30 to 40, maybe even less, maybe like 20,000, which in general is still good. It's good. That is good, right? But it wouldn't be as great as having nearly still like 6-digit player base counts on average. I hope I'm wording this right. I feel like I'm not, but I hope you guys are getting it. And what these actual player base drops mean for developers and companies and alike, it's not necessarily, oh, why are people not playing our game anymore? They know the answer to that. I'm sure they do. I'm sure they have internal teams, internal researchers that know why people drop off. And honestly, it's just common sense, a common thing where people will try what's new and, they get bored and they just move on. This is not necessarily an enigma. However, what they do know 100% is that they know that the players that are still stuck around are their committed fan base. They are now their consumers, and pretty much, hey, like we got 80 to 100,000 potential paying customers that are still playing the game. They are committed to the game. These people are our fan base, pretty much. And remember, guys, this is just Steam alone. This is not even taking console into account. And with Marvel Rivals recently, coming to PS4, which I'm not necessarily too fond of, that's a lot of untapped numbers that we don't know what actually makes the entire player base of the game overall. And another thing is, I'm 100% certain that somewhere down the line within the next year or so, that this game is coming to like the Switch 2, Nintendo Switch 2. And that would definitely boost its numbers up. All in all, when you see people say like, oh, the game's dying, 85% player base drop, they honestly, not to be mean or anything, but to put it bluntly, they don't know what they're talking about. And I've seen countless videos, stating things like that, but I've also seen videos actually like know what they're talking about and be like, yeah, this is kind of normal. But then again, like their title and thumbnail kind of insinuate. I know it's like YouTube content creation, but it's a little bit clickbaity where, anybody that's scrolling through will see that, oh, game's dying. Not necessarily click on the video and see that the person talking about it is saying, oh, it's actually not dying. But I digress. That's a completely different topic. Just to summarize, because I don't want this to be so long, it's pretty much all multiplayer games go through a drop-off point. Marvel Rivals is going through its drop-off point. It's completely normal, so the game isn't dying. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. And again, this is coming from someone who doesn't necessarily defend Netease. In fact, there's a lot of things with Netease that I just, shake my head on. But I'm just kind of telling it how it is because I feel like I'm a little bit more aware when it comes to how like the industry works. And it's not because, I'm not touting myself as this guru or anything like that. But like I've been a nerd for this kind of stuff since like high school. Whenever you queue up to matches like Marvel Rivals, you still get like insta-queued immediately. Like matches will take never longer than like a minute. It's always usually 30 seconds for me if you're doing quick match. If you're doing competitive, it's like, a minute or two at most. And obviously if you're higher level, that queue time just gets higher because that's just naturally the case with like, high level players. But don't let, TikTok tell you otherwise. Don't let YouTube Shorts tell you otherwise. Don't let, people that don't know exactly what they're talking about tell you otherwise. The game is fine. It's not dying. In fact, to add on, so you guys know how like the number was like around 600,000, I believe. And like people are, popping out Steam charts being like, oh, look at this, 80,000 players, it's dead. And it's like, bro, like there are other games that wish they were in that position that Netease was when it comes to Marvel Rivals. Because honestly, taking things in hindsight, a quote dead game would have no more than like, it would be in the 4 digits, so to speak. And when I mean 4 digits, I mean like they'd have like maybe 8,000 players. But even then, that's not even dead. That's still pretty good. I feel like a lot of people don't know exactly what a quote dead game is. I've seen multiplayer games barely chart up to 10,000. They used to peak in the 6 digits. Now they're like, they can't crack 10,000, but they're still doing just fine. Why? Because the developers have a committed and, while niche, dedicated fan base who spend money on the game, on whether it be on like, all sorts of DLC, skins, or whatever. They have their money maker, so to speak. And with Marvel Rivals' case, they have 80 to 100,000 potential paying customers that will pull out their wallet. But anyways, I've been rambling. I know there's really not much to go on this sort of topic when it's not necessarily face value, but it is something that people just aren't aware of. And it's just a simple like, hey, this and this is actually good. you know, for you guys who watch videos like this, be it mine specifically or any other sort of Mall Rivals content that isn't, you know, rage bait videos, or not even rage bait, I'm talking about like, you know, toxicity videos, you are the committed player base. You are the, I don't want to say hardcore, but I mean, you're kind of leaning into that aspect. And I believe that for any game, right? When a game comes out and months later you are still ingrained in that sort of culture of videos for that game, whether you're looking up topics, discussions, impressions, you are the dedicated fan base. You are obviously the players that are sticking out, the players that are there after the herd has been trimmed, so to speak. So you know what? Let's give everyone a round of applause and a pat on the back to yourselves, because we're still playing this game. In all seriousness, I still have fun with it, so I'm obviously still playing it. And yeah, I want you guys to let me know what you guys think, what necessarily a dead game is, and some examples if you guys have any in mind. What you guys think of the topic. What do you guys think about, you know, people saying that this game is dead and blah, blah, blah. Let me know in the comments. And next week, I'll probably have some different type of content up that isn't just me rambling on a microphone. But yeah, I want to try new things, still Mall Rivals related. So stick around. I'd really appreciate it if you guys can like and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.